Hello! Welcome to Brainspill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and you may have seen that the Megalodon in pop culture has been this big, ferocious, fierce creature that has lived in the depths for hundreds of thousands of years, and may or may not be around today. Yes, whilst I've heard of the Megalodon before, I never actually knew whether this thing existed. I mean, I don't think anyone can say for absolute definite that they're sure it existed, but is the idea of a Megalodon actually existing just a fantasy, or do we actually have evidence to show that, yes, a shark of this size could very well have existed at one point in the past, or maybe even in the present? So I decided to do a little bit of research, and I'm going to let you know what I found out today. And when I say research, it's secondary research. I, of course, am not going down in the ocean depths myself to go and figure out where this thing is. No siree. And let's just get one thing straight. I'm fairly sure, okay, I'm not fairly sure, but, you know, a little bit sure, that the idea of a Megalodon existing today is probably not very likely. Mainly because of the fact that if one did exist, we would probably have found one already. You know, given how massive these things are. In a way, I'm actually sort of glad that's the case. I would rather not be swimming around in the ocean knowing that one of these things might be out there. Okay, so even if we don't know if they exist now, what I'm asking is, did they ever exist in the past? Well, it's been known that there has been larger shark species in the past, based from fossils alone that we've found throughout pretty much the entirety of history. Pliny the Elder, around 70 AD, believed shark teeth were triangular objects dropped from the sky during lunar eclipses. In the Middle Ages, Europeans thought that they were tongue stones, or petrified stones of snakes or dragons. Megalodon teeth were worn as pendants and even used in medicine. So yeah, these fossils have been found in many different places around the world in different eras and time periods, meaning that, yes, there were likely animals who had teeth this big. And I mean, I don't think this is something that you could pretty much fake, particularly back in the day. So basically, these discoveries identify the fact that there were animals big enough to warrant these teeth. Huge teeth. Teeth bigger than most things we find today. Something perhaps that a Megalodon would have. These things are so large, in fact, that this is a set of reconstructed jaws on display at the National Aquarium in Baltimore, which just goes to show what sort of thing we're looking at here. The teeth alone are scary, but the Megalodon might not even need these if it can just swallow you whole. However, with the fossils turning up previously, this must have meant that the Megalodon was around long before human civilizations were. And you'd be correct, given the fact it is estimated that the Megalodon were real and around approximately 23 to 3.6 million years ago. Yes, whilst it's true we don't actually have a fully intact bone structure of a Megalodon shark, we've managed to get the pieces and fragment them together in some sort of strange jigsaw to try and assume what we think it is like, based on the anatomy of a normal shark, and then putting all the fossils together and trying to make up what a Megalodon could have been and how big it actually was. Which, safe to say, is pretty damn big. However, scientists have been able to piece together what they can and draw some conclusions, which is basically like a great white shark, a basking shark, or a tiger shark, but just bigger, stockier, and beefier. No one's quite sure exactly which shark it's most related to, but we do know one thing, and that they were damn big. And that's all you can say about that. Most estimates of Megalodon's size were inferred from its teeth, with a maximum length of estimates being 14 to 20.3 metres, which is about 46 to 67 foot in length, and with an average length of about 10.5 metres or 34 foot in length. So, with the teeth being some of the only surviving material of a Megalodon that we have to work with, this is a good estimate, and it seems clear that these would have been used to break bone of smaller prey with a biting force which must have been unlike anything else. So yeah, basically what scientists have done is they've used the teeth, which are some of the only remaining fossils that we have to know that the Megalodon were real, or what we believe are the Megalodon, and then basically use that to create a reconstruction of what a Megalodon could have been like. Basically, just on the computer. The only takeaway I have from this is that if one of those things was in the ocean, you know that I'm not going in there. I mean, we weren't really meant for the waters anyway, and with those things out there, I'm just gonna stick on land, thanks. Yes, like I said earlier, these fossils have been found in many places around the world, but the common trend is that they've normally been found in areas where the waters are warmer, which, makes sense because who wants to stick around in some cold Arctic waters, particularly when you're that big? It's very likely the Megalodon would have been roaming around these warm waters for a number of years until they slowed decline in their populations before basically being extinct at some point in the past. But how do we know that? While again we can't be 100% sure, we have a good idea given that we know that there was a period of ice ages and cooling waters which may have impacted the Megalodon heavily. There were also concerns over lowering sea levels and less diversity in their diets of other whale species that may have led to an eventual decline in the Megalodon species. Yeah, that's something to bear in mind. I mean, these guys are massive, meaning that if they were going to eat anything, the only thing that's really going to satisfy a hunger is probably a whale. And there's only so many of them in the ocean, so if the whales were, declining in population themselves, then the Megalodon have less to go around, meaning that their big bulky frames are going to need to get something to sustain themselves. Unfortunately, if it's not there, then that might be the end for old Megalodon. Scientists are pretty confident that whales were being hunted by Megalodon due to the fact that fossilised flipper bones and tail vertebrae of large whales have been found with Megalodon bite marks in them, which suggests that Megalodon would immobilise a target whale before killing it and feeding on it. That's gotta be a nasty way to go. I'm sure that you already probably gathered this by now, but the Megalodon was an apex predator. Nothing in the waters was going to challenge this thing. Perhaps aside from another Megalodon, or the effects of a changing climate which may very well have led to the downfall of such a large and mysterious beast. So yes, to answer the question at the very start of the video, yes, we do believe that the Megalodon actually did exist, but we really don't know when, how big they were, or what happened to them. Yes, we still have an awful lot to learn about these creatures and a lot to figure out about exactly what happened to them. All I know is I'm going to use those points of reference, aka pop culture and Jaws, for my idea of what a Megalodon should have been like. And I just want to start today's video by saying that the whole reason that this video topic was picked was because dinosaurs are cool, and they're pretty awesome creatures. So, today's scaly beast is actually not prehistoric. It just sounds better in the title and intro. It is actually a large alligator type creature found in what is now Australia, in the Great Australian Superbasin, at a site dating to the Cretaceous period, which is about 145.5 million years to 65.5 million years ago. This specimen found is to be believed around 95 million years old and is 8 feet long, which is absolutely crazy to think about. Scientists did not even believe that this was a fully grown specimen, somehow. So yes, this thing is pretty darn big, and the reason that scientists know that this can eat other dinosaurs is due to the fact that when they found these remains, they already found a pre-digested dinosaur inside the remains of one of these mammoth alligators. So the alligator itself and the meal it had that night were both fossilised, which is pretty cool to see. Science, people. The dinosaur was a young ornithopod, most likely a duck-billed dinosaur of sorts. Poor guy. Probably got swallowed in one go, not gonna lie. They were probably not quite able to identify the exact species of dinosaur, but it was determined that it was probably a youngling who met an unfortunate end. The fact that a dinosaur alligator might be able to grow much bigger than this shows that if it could get its jaws even bigger, then it would probably be able to eat a much bigger dinosaur. The remains, as impressive as it is, was missing a few vital parts to it however, such as the pelvis, and the skull, and the hind limbs, and many, many, many more bones. A lot of the animal actually. It was kind of an incomplete beast at this point. Dubbed the hang on a moment. Oh Jesus, here we go. Dubbed the Confractosuchosauroptonus. This translates from words in Latin and Greek which collectively mean broken crocodile dinosaur killer. Whoa, holy shit, that's a cool name. But at least the name, despite the fact that it's incredibly long, actually is what they found. It was a broken, shattered remains of an alligator. Well, and that was what they called it. So its legacy lives on. Not only is this an impressive find on the size of the specimen, but this was also very important as it informed researchers a lot about the ecological food web in the Cretaceous period and what alligator dinosaurs might have snacked on. And the answer to that was pretty much other dinosaurs. It is likely dinosaurs constituted an important resource in the Cretaceous ecological food web. Given the lack of comparable global specimens, this prehistoric crocodile and its last meal will continue to provide clues to the relationships and behaviours of animals that inhabited Australia millions of years ago. What I find so impressive about this is, despite the fact that we found some dusty old bones in the ground, we were able to accurately identify a lot of information about these creatures that lived millions and millions of years ago, and we've got some pretty nifty technology to back it up. Yes, we have the technology at our fingertips to identify the bones and confirm exactly what animal they came from. These labs have special neutron and synchrotron X-ray micro-CT scanning technologies to identify where the bones were located. This was required given the fact that the bones were found inside the croc were very small and fragile to be manually examined. So the CT scans were helpful to create a 3D reconstruction of the bones and whereabouts this might have been in the animal. This process can take months to undertake, but the results are fascinating. So yes, even looking at the dinosaur that this giant crocodile ate, they were able to determine that it was largely still intact, but its femur had been likely snapped in two, probably when it was chomped down by a massive alligator, which, yeah, that must have been a pretty nasty end. This might have also been due to the fact that a large tooth was found embedded in the shattered femur of this dinosaur, which also goes to show that dentistry in the Cretaceous period was next to non-existent. So, yeah, there's that too, I suppose. This program is so advanced that it's even able to produce 3D images and a mesh for each individual bone identified. This makes it more difficult when the dinosaur you're examining has had its bones crushed and fragmented, but with the careful collection of the find, they can try and keep this together as far as possible, so maybe, just maybe, they could digitally curate the dinosaur back together as far as possible. Look, if I was smarter and I had to choose any field of being a scientist in, it would be something like this, because, damn, like I said, dinosaurs are cool. The study went even as far as being able to identify acid etching on the carcass's bones, and given the lack of impact that this had on the bones, this seems to suggest that the animal was swallowed, died, and then was only partially digested until the consumer would become part of history. It's almost like a Russian doll of the animal world. You basically open one up and then you find another, and then I imagine you could open that one up and then find something even smaller. You know, there's a whole wealth of archaeological discoveries to be made just because of someone's mealtime. Crocodilian animals have been known to exist even before this period, around the Jurassic period of 251.9 million to 201.3 million years ago. Evidence for this can be found with other dinosaur fossils having tooth marks and teeth embedded into their bones. This seems to suggest that this has been a long-running cuisine of the giant alligator. Look, if a dinosaur can fit inside an alligator's mouth, then it was probably going to end up a late-night snack. Gigantism has been reported not only in several specimens of crocodile and alligator, but they have also been found around the world in different eras. There are records in North America of some giant crocodiles around 82 million years ago, between 8 to 12 meters long. This is partially why this discovery was so important, as it pretty much just confirmed a lot of theories that people had about these giant, huge alligators that used to pretty much snack on anything they wanted to. Dinosaurs, like I said, pretty cool. We have to go to the Gobi Desert, where the Olgoi porkoi, Mongolian for large intestine worm, is believed to roam. The creature first came to Western attention due to Roy Chapman Andrews' 1926 book On the Trial of Ancient Man, a book which describes the tales of monsters and escapades from what is commonly referred to as the Indiana Jones of the ancient world of paleontology, with one tale including that of the giant sandworm in the Gobi Desert, the Mongolian deathworm. As a matter of fact, there are a few lines in the book in particular which pretty much describe what this thing is. It is shaped like a sausage, about 2 feet long, has no head nor leg, and is so poisonous that merely to touch it means instant death. It lives in the most desolate parts of the Gobi Desert. Okay, let me repeat that for the people in the back that didn't quite hear me the first time. Instant death! Did you hear me over there? Good. He even doubles down on the legend in his 1932 book, The New Conquest of Central Asia, saying that they are known to live in the arid sandy regions of the Western Gobi. It is often believed that the worm is around during damp seasons, so particularly when it's just been raining, that you might have a sighting of the Mongolian deathworm. A lot of people are quite careful when it comes to picking up water buckets from the ground, because you think that there might be a deathworm right underneath it. Now, this must be the perfect wives' tale to tell your kids if they've been behaving badly, and just basically say that in the night, the Mongolian deathworm's gonna get you. It's gonna get you. You need to be careful. That's right, don't spill a drop of that water, or it's gonna get you. The legend behind this isn't just make-believe, but that I heard this from a number of second-hand stories and tales who have sightings of the deathworm from the locals in Mongolia, who have said that it does exist. Bearing in mind that none of the officials that were spoken to have ever seen one themselves, but they all believe it exists. Okay, sure, like the tooth fairy. We've all heard from people that the tooth fairy exists, it comes and gets your tooth. And I have absolutely no reason to doubt that, because I'm the one that got a £5 note under their bed one time they had a tooth come out. Yeah, £5, not just one. I was a lucky boy. I'm sure the tooth fairy has managed to make her throne of teeth by this point in time. Investigations were undertaken into the creature, to which locals described the deathworm being large, toxic, and white brushard in colour, even being described as a tailless lizard. They soon found that many of the descriptions given were actually similar to that of a young sand boa instead of any deathworm, which leads some people to believe that this might have been exactly what the animal was the entire time. Although, just looking at a sand boa, I think it would be pretty hard to mistake one of these things for what people were describing as the Mongolian deathworm. Maybe that's just me, but these little things, I'm sure they won't harm anyone. Zoologist UK Gorlov, who worked extensively in Mongolia in the 1970s, decided that they would put this to the test and showed the Mongols of Gobi a specimen of the deathworm, to which they confirmed that this was the same worm. The bad thing for them was the sample they were given was actually that of a Tartar sand boa. So this must be one of two things. One, the myth is debunked and there is no sandworm, or two, everyone's forgotten what a Mongolian deathworm looks like. I can't think of any other explanation. Either way, people are always venturing out and being a little bit careful to seeing what they can find out in the sands. I'm sure there's a lesson in here somewhere, but I really can't find it. Despite this and the fact that pretty much every single person who they've spoken to has said that they've never actually seen one in their lives before, they are still fearful of the existence of something like a deathworm, and there's probably an explanation behind this. This could all be down to ancient hieroglyphics, in which ancestors have put many depictions of snakes or snake-like people, which place some significance in culture. One well-known myth, for example, is a dragon reminiscent of ancient Chinese dragons. Such a symbol is highly symbolic in Mongolia, and the dragon being considered a mystical animal. And the idea that other amphibious animals being related to the dragon may also share some level of respect and belief, in that giant snakes share the same mystical status that a large dragon would. However, instead of praise, the snake would be the symbol of a serpent king of the underworld, which in turn may spur rather fearful ideas about what giant sandworms gobbling people up in the deserts could entail. So yeah, that's just one possible explanation as to why there is still some fear or belief that there is something out there, despite the fact we have no actual evidence that one of these things does exist or ever did. Despite there being no evidence, this has, of course, not stopped a whole flurry of filmmakers and journalists rushing out to the Gobi Desert to see what they can find, either by making one-off programs, news reports, or in some cases, even entire documentary series. As you might imagine, many of these people don't yield any results, aside from a TV show where at the end they may show something that could exist, or quote-unquote evidence, but they never really have much to show for it at the end of the day. Yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but these sorts of programs, it just feels like a bit of a waste of time. Mainly because you spend an hour watching someone try and find some supernatural animal which we know hasn't been found, because if it was ever found, it would be on the news. And I'm pretty sure I've not seen anything significant saying that they'd caught a massive sandworm in the desert eating people up like a Mongolian deathworm. And yes, I know this is incredibly hypocritical coming from someone like me, who has just made you sit through a video talking about that very topic, and here you are watching me. But at the end of the day, at least I've wasted no more than 10 minutes of your time, instead of someone that might watch a documentary, which might be a whole series long. So I've saved you about, 12, 13 hours of content? So I want to start today's video by directing your attention to this image. This is Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. However, there's a slight difference in this, in that there is a more noodly appendage that we have to look at, coming from a giant spaghetti monster. So, before you click off on one of these not so good videos on the recommended feed, I'm going to go into a bit more detail and explain why on earth we're talking about this thing today. Pastafarianism is a social movement or a light-hearted view on the idea of religion, a parody of religion itself. The followers of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster believe in a flying spaghetti monster. Obviously. Followers of the Church attest the legitimacy of the religion, and while it does not have as much recognition compared to other established religious groups, this idea of thinking is growing. Look, I'm not advocating for religion in any way, but all I'm saying is if you're going to pick one, you may as well pick one of the ones that has that live, laugh, love mentality that everybody likes to harp on about. Yes, it's pretty much one of those annoying middle-aged housewife slogans that are banded around, except this time it's got something to do with spaghetti. Despite the official website of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster saying that it existed in secrecy for hundreds of years, it does say that it only came to the mainstream just a few years ago. How far back do we mean? Well, in 2005, Bobby Henderson, an American physics graduate, wrote an open letter in protest to the Kansas State Board of Education on their decision to permit teaching intelligent design as an alternative to evolution in public school science classes. He demanded that equal time be given in the classroom for alternate scientific beliefs, such as that of the flying spaghetti monsterism, alongside intelligent design and evolution. Of course, being the late 2000s, he published his letter online, gaining the appreciation of the internet, who made this a viral sensation. So, to put it simply, this giant flying spaghetti monster is a symbol of the opposition of intelligent design teaching in schools. Reporter of the Associated Press commented on this open letter at the time and made the following observation. Between the lines, the point of the letter was this: there's no more scientific basis for intelligent design than there is for the idea of an omniscient creature made of pasta created the universe. If intelligent design supporters could demand equal time in a science class, why not everyone else? The only reasonable solution is to put nothing into science classes but the best available science. So, Henderson decided to use his newfound popularity and decided to write a book, or a gospel of the flying spaghetti monster. And in 2006 even claimed to be a prophet. You know, as you do. I mean, if I was a guy that created an entire religion on a flying spaghetti monster, I too would pronounce myself a prophet. The central creation myth is that an invisible and undetectable flying spaghetti monster created the universe after drinking heavily. Pirates were the original incarnation of pastafanarists, with many today associating themselves with the group and praising their carb god with huge balls. Meatballs, I may add. So, effectively, the church says that it is due to this drunken rampage that resulted in a flawed planet, which actually goes, in my opinion, a lot further to explain a lot of the messed up stuff that we have in our world compared to many other religions, because I think that is a very, very valid criticism, and if someone did it when they were pissed up, then, well, who knows how it happened, aside from maybe one too many tequila shots. The other beliefs around the religion came in the form of what happens during the afterlife, where heaven includes a beer volcano and a stripper, with their version of hell being the exact same, but the beer is stale and the strippers all have STIs. Remind me to seek forgiveness for all the wrongs I've undertaken in my life. Followers even go as far as having a headdress to show their support for the religion, and you may have guessed it already, but the ideal headwear for this is to stick a colander or a pasta strainer on your head. Because why the hell not? Satire at its finest. As you might imagine, the church has garnered some rather mixed reviews in recent years, many of which come forward and absolutely love the idea of the church and what it stands for, or just the fact that they love a giant flying spaghetti monster. Whilst others, including those that are particularly critical of the idea of opposing intelligent design and there being room for other sciences out there, might have a few questions. Proponents of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster have used this to dispute religious arguments, in that since the existence of the invisible and undetectable flying spaghetti monster is something that they believe in, similar to that of other proposed supernatural beings, this simply cannot be falsified. It demonstrates that the burden of proof rests on those who believe in the existence of such beings. I mean, at the end of the day, the whole thing is pretty arbitrary anyway, because yes, you can claim that you have a profound belief in some being that you don't have the evidence to prove is there. Yes, okay, fair enough. But at the end of the day, ultimately, it is what is in here. What is truly in your heart, what you want to believe, and what you think you can contribute to the world to make it a better place. Even if that's believing with everything you've got inside of you that your Lord and Saviour is made of pasta. Yes, that's right, a flying spaghetti monster is, as argued by many people that follow the religion, as philosophically defensible as many other non-physical beings or deities that other religions prescribe to. So yeah, you can believe it if you want to, or you can say that you don't. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Many people follow the church because the idea that they like a flying spaghetti monster, or that they truly believe that their Lord and Saviour is a flying spaghetti monster, but many others use this as a vehicle to basically push an argument and an agenda in a very philosophical topic, and I think it's a pretty creative way to go about it. So, how popular is the church? Well, it has to be pretty popular, because if it was not very popular, we probably wouldn't be talking about it today. There are thousands of confirmed followers online. However, it's not established enough, well, as far as many people see anyway, for it to be an actual recognised religion. A Dutch court ruled that Pastafarianism isn't actually a recognised religion. The reason for this? A law student applied for her identity card and driver's licence to be changed so she could wear a colander on her head. She argued that it was the same as wearing a turban or a headscarf. The arguments from the other side was that the religion did not require this as an item of clothing and was only a recommendation, meaning that she couldn't rely on any religious grounds for saying that she had to wear it. So yeah, there's an awful lot to cover here, from what the religion is, how silly it is, and also perhaps the reason that many other people prescribe to the idea of this religion. However, that was hopefully a quick whistle-stop tour on what this giant flying spaghetti monster is and how it came about today. Say it with me, folks, animals are cool. Of course they are, you wouldn't have clicked this video if you didn't think that. Whilst we have explored a lot of our planet already, there is very little known about a lot of the ocean life. And it's surprising how absolutely little we actually know about a lot of the animals that are under the waves. Particularly with many species who maybe we haven't even discovered yet. And yes, I hear you say, how is that possible? Surely we've managed to explore much of the world already, which, you're not wrong, but when it comes to the oceans, we have explored about 5% of it. Yes, we have a lot to uncover here. Just to put this into perspective, we have better maps of the moon than we do our own ocean floor. That just kind of puts into perspective how little we know about it. One such animal is the giant squid, a creature which, as you might imagine by the name, is pretty big, but for some strange reason is so elusive that humans have had little to no contact with it. And by the very few times we do, it is truly a fascinating sight to behold. Hello! Welcome to Brainspill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and with the name Giant Squid, Like I said, you'd think that this giant squid would be pretty easy to find, but surprisingly, it's not. And maybe you don't believe me, and hell, if I was watching this video for the first time, I would probably agree. But I'm going to give you some context just to explain why these animals are so difficult to find. The giant squid, as the name describes, is a squid, but particularly giant. The squid is a species of deep-sea dwelling squid, able to grow to a size of about 12 to 13 meters in length or 43 foot. Some claims state that giant squid have been spotted to be upwards of 20 meters in length, but these have yet to be scientifically documented. If you were in any doubt, 20 meters is longer than a bus, so you can kind of get an idea how big some of these things can possibly be. Yes, these things can get pretty big. However, according to a giant squid expert named Steve O'Shea, such lengths were likely achieved by greatly stretching the two tentacles like elastic bands. Big, long, stretchy arms. A handheld camera was invented in 1888, and today is the year 2022. So, I want you to take a guess when the first photograph of a giant squid was taken. The correct answer was the year 2004. Yes, to say that we have had access to technology where we can take pictures for quite some time, it is really surprising that it's only been in the year 2000s that we've actually managed to capture one on film. And yes, whilst this baffles me, we have always sort of known that these creatures exist, but like I said, they're just that elusive. You do see many oldie world pictures of ships being attacked by a large kraken, almost like we saw this thing in the water, not known what the hell it is, and then started to spread stories that a giant squid was in the deep seas. I would have thought this was a bit silly, but given that there have been multiple reports of a giant squid being more than 20 meters long, this doesn't seem so crazy anymore. These things tend to be around the world, but as a deep sea creature, it makes sense that they are not spotted often, and only in exceptional circumstances when one would come to the surface. And even if someone did manage to catch one, then I guess it's calamari for lunch. As a matter of fact, if you went online and typed in giant kraken, a lot of the images you'll see are paintings of pictures of giant squid fighting what seems to be sperm whale. It just so happens to be a popular image that you see on these types of things, but this isn't actually accurate, mainly due to the fact that scientists have realised that the giant squid is actually the prey of a sperm whale. So, the more you know. We have known a lot about the giant squid for some time, and know whereabouts they are in the world, but this is largely down to the carcasses that float to the surface, which are then found by fishermen. So we do science things to them and learn a lot about them. And I'm sure you can think of a number of wonderful experiments they would have done on them. So, despite all this research, we have actually never really seen them on film. Until now. This was the first footage ever taken of a giant squid on film. The first video of a giant squid, which was as recent as 2006, when researchers simply suspended bait off a research vessel until one came to the surface to take a bite. And after all that, it seems like it's actually quite easy to get one on film. This one was a little baby squid though, and it was first confirmed to be a giant squid after it came to the surface. So this was a good jumping off platform. You could do some more research and see if you could get footage of a large, adult-sized giant squid in its natural habitat, in the depths. In 2012, another group of scientists from Japan's National Science Museum filmed a giant squid in its natural habitat for the first time, deep underwater. But we can do one better, I'm sure. Dr. Eddie Widder and her crew of fellow scientists and ocean crew went back out in 2019 for a further ocean expedition to the Gulf of Mexico for a 2-week exploration to test some new technology and to see if they could spot anything surprisingly unique, such as a giant squid, for example. However, they weren't going to half-bake this, they were prepared. You see, the problem they've had before is every time these scientists get a submersive vessel, which they put underwater, the engine is pretty loud, which they think scares away the giant squid. But they decided that they were going to do it a little bit differently. They wanted something that was going to attract the squid, rather than scare it away. Therefore, the vessel they adopted had a camera fitted called the Medusa, with a special lure to attract deep sea animals. The lure is silent, and let out a light pattern which mimics that of a deep sea squid, something familiar to try and bring one closer near the boat. So, if you can't beat them, trick them to come closer. That's how you outsmart a giant calamari. The vessel had 5 cameras, which took 24 hours each to complete the recordings, and then the crew had to sit down and review the almost 120 hours of footage. Kinda like me when I make a video and then skim through the timeline to make sure that I didn't make any major cock-ups. Not foolproof by any means, but at least it captures most of the mistakes. However, the team were in luck, because after reviewing all the footage, this is what they saw. This is one of the few times these creatures have ever been caught on film. We all proceeded to go slightly nuts. We know so little about how these animals survive in the depths. This helps us learn something more about how they hunt and their energy budget, but we need to know a lot more. And do you know what? This footage might get claimed. On this video, I kinda don't care, because I think this is amazing, and these squid are hella cool, and I think you guys need to see it. So hopefully I don't get claimed, but we'll have to see. Provided we don't absolutely fuck the ocean up, we will hopefully be able to keep researching and getting even more amazing pictures of these animals in their natural habitat. We might even be able to discover even more amazing creatures that we just haven't seen yet. Maybe. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. We all know the giant squid is pretty giant, and whilst they are there in the ocean, they are very elusive. So, my theory is that there is an even bigger ocean animal who is even more elusive, so elusive in fact, that we haven't seen one for hundreds of thousands of years. Yes, we are talking about my boy, the Mosasaurus. Somewhere he's out there. There's 95% of the ocean we haven't explored yet. My Mosasaurus is out there somewhere. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.